Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Michelle Dudley. And for disclosure's sake, I want to welcome you first. Secondly, you and I went to Hampton together.
Absolutely.
So many, many years ago. So welcome to the program. And we're going to talk about something. I have never done a show on this before, and it's about women and infertility. You've written a book about it. You have been on a journey with this. And I just thought this would be such an incredible story to cover. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me. I know that you knew me as Michelle Dudley, but
Yes.
I am now Michelle Kendrick.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And you have a book?
Yes, I do. I have a book, Miracles So Great.
Yes. And you wrote that about your journey. So can we start off talking about how long did you try, or when did you begin this journey to motherhood?
So I would say that I began this journey to motherhood, I think, as I was a teen, and I began to have all of these female problems even then. I was having these very heavy menstrual cycles, very painful menstrual cycles, and the doctor was even saying that I had an inverted uterus. And what they were instructing me to do was actually to do handstands and stand on my head to try to get this anatomical thing in the correct position. So it started there. And then as I got older, I began to see gynecologists, and they were very concerned because they began to see fibroids, which is very common in our Black community.
That is the Black woman's curse, fibroids. I remember once I went to a baby shower, and the women were just talking, and out of the 12 or so women who were there, 9 of them said they had suffered from fibroids. So it is so very common in our community.
Yes, absolutely. And so because of the size of the fibroids, they were, and when they took them out, they showed me, and these fibroids were almost like as big as grapefruits that were in there. So I had a myomectomy, and I actually had 2 of them so that they could go in and remove these fibroids. And so after that, I had my first miscarriage. And that was very devastating because at the time I was young and I was single, and it was an unexpected pregnancy, but I had been wanting children for so long. I was so excited and so happy that finally I was going to have a child, and then I miscarried.
Go ahead, where'd you go from there?
Then from there, I went and I started to see some other doctors because they were very concerned because these fibroids came back again. And I was advised to have a second fibroid surgery. And the doctor then, he said, you know, your best option would be to have a hysterectomy. You're really the best option, the ideal thing for you is to take your uterus out. And so I said, let me get another opinion. So I went to get another opinion, and that doctor examined me and said the same thing. You need to have a hysterectomy. So I refused to have a hysterectomy. I was believing God for a little girl, and so I refused to have that. And so the surgeon at the time, he said, well, what we can do is we can go in and we can take some of the fibroids out. And I said, yes, you can do that, but I want you to leave my uterus intact. And he was very harsh, very critical, and he said, you know, Michelle, you don't even have a boyfriend. You don't you don't even sound like you have any prospects, and you're 41 years old, you're advanced age, so you really need to think about going ahead and just having this total procedure that I'm recommending. And I said, well, what I'm going to do and what I want you to do is you can take some fibroids out, but I want you to leave my uterus intact so that I may have this little girl that I am believing God for.
Wow.
And so that's what he did. And then after that, I got married, and I went overseas to Germany. I was married to a soldier in the Army. And when I got there, we got pregnant. I was so excited at about 6 months. So finally, I was going to have this child that I was praying for, believing God for, and then again, I miscarried.
Oh. Were you further along this time in the pregnancy, or was it in the first trimester? Or?
It was in the first trimester. I just was not expecting this at all. I was on the border of Austria in a beautiful hotel, and I was there on a conference with my husband, and all of a sudden I started feeling sick, and then the vomiting came, then the bleeding came, and I had to be rushed to a German hospital where they weren't speaking any English.
You know what's interesting is when you have a miscarriage in the first trimester, people think, oh, you know, a lot of people don't even know that they're pregnant yet or whatever. It is just as devastating as having a miscarriage later on in the pregnancy, because it's almost like it's the death of a dream. You were preparing for this baby, you were excited about this baby, all of a sudden that dream is dead. So it can be just as emotionally trying as a miscarriage later on in the pregnancy. Also, we were talking earlier, and I was telling you how I had one miscarriage,
Right.
and that I was crazy. I mean, it really took me on an emotional roller coaster. I understand there are women who have had 2, 3, 4 miscarriages, and it is just really a mental struggle. I'm so glad you got through that and went on. So what was the next step for you?
So for the next step for me is I went back to the doctors. So my question was, why is it that I'm not able to carry a child to term? What's going on here? And so they said, we'll do some fertility testing, and they did fertility testing, and my then husband, he was trying to blame this on me, because a lot of times the woman, unfortunately, everyone's pointing at the woman and blaming the woman for these things. So he was making a joke of it, and he would say, come on with your old eggs, and all of those kinds of things. And it actually turned out that his shooters weren't shooting, is what is what the doctor said. So unfortunately, I got a report that I didn't want to get. And the report was from a group of doctors that had examined me. They said, we're sorry, you're not going to have any children. They said, you're advanced age, your husband's getting ready to deploy to Iraq, and your fertility testing doesn't look good. And I said, well, can we take fertility drugs? And they were like, no, that's not an option for you. And I said, what about in vitro? And they said, well, no, that's not an option. And anyway, we don't do in vitro, but you can go out on the German economy and get in vitro, but we're not going to refer you because of all of these miscarriages and surgeries. I had several surgeries. At one time they thought that I had cancer, so they went in and did an exploratory lap, and the lesion that we had seen that showed that the doctor got in, he said, I didn't even see the lesion, Michelle. The lesion wasn't even there, but there was endometriosis in there. Oh. So I burned that out. And so they said, you're just not a good candidate. There's nothing we can do. And that was very devastating to me. And I had to ask myself, Michelle, whose report are you going to believe? Are you going to believe this report from the medical doctors? Are you going to believe the report of the Lord? And I decided to believe the report of the Lord. And I began to fast and pray. And my then husband, he came home for R&R for 3 weeks. Only 3 weeks. He had been gone for 6 months and would be gone for another 6 months. And we conceived. Wow. And we conceived here in the States. And it's still, my journey didn't even stop there. Because when we conceived, then one morning, about a month later, I woke up and I was bleeding again. And I found myself at a local hospital. I won't name the name, but I was in there, and I had to really war. I had to pray and still believe God, even though the bleeding was there.
Now, how far along were you at this point?
I was about a month.
Okay.
I was about a month. And I stayed in that ER for the whole day. So when another doctor came on, he said, I'm going to send you down for a sonogram, Michelle. And went down to the sonogram, and I heard the tech say, looking at my sonogram, she said, oh my God. And I said, well, let me see, what is it? She said, there are 2 in there.
Oh.
There are
How
two babies in
wonderful.
there. I saw, and when I looked, I saw two little dots that were on the screen. But yes, I got pregnant with twins. So what I always like to say is God gave me double.
Yes, he
For
did,
all
for
the
the trouble.
all the trouble, Stephanie, that I had, God gave me two.
And so how was the pregnancy?
Well, the doctor said the bleeding has stopped. I said, well, can I travel back to Germany? He said, yeah, get back on the plane. I got back on the plane. I went back to Germany, and I went back to see the doctors who told me there was nothing that could be done. And so their question was, well, how did this happen, Michelle? And I started to be real funny about how did you think that something like this happened? But I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, I just believe that it was divine intervention. I believe that it was the hand of God. That's what I believe.
So how long were you able to carry? Did you go the whole 40 weeks? Did you deliver early?
It's interesting that you asked that. They were, the whole pregnancy, that's all they told me, that you're advanced stage and this is a high risk pregnancy. And we
Yes,
have to
'cause you know I have twins too.
Yeah,
So
so we have to watch you very closely. I was age 44 then. And so they watched me so closely, and I worked up until maybe about 6 weeks, even before I delivered, because I wanted just to be busy. I wanted to be active, but they were monitoring me so closely that I had to go ahead and leave my job about 6 weeks before. So I actually had them at it was 36 weeks I had them.
and that's very good because my twins were born at 36 weeks. But I know at about 7 months, I couldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I would walk for a foot and I'd be exhausted. I'd be ready for a nap.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if humans are supposed to carry multiples because that was the most difficult pregnancy for me, was that twin pregnancy, because it was hard to move. I was just really planted on the sofa for like the last 6 weeks of the pregnancy. I'd just be exhausted, and it was beautiful to have the two of them. One was very active, the other wasn't. And their personalities are like that today. She's real mellow.
Okay.
And he's just like, all over the place. So the way they were in utero is the way they are in real life. He was busy all the time. So how were yours? Yours are identical. Mine are fraternal.
Okay. So mine are identical. I think somewhere maybe when I was 3 months pregnant, they sent me for ultrasonography. And so they sent me to a Dr. Clapp. I'll never forget. I said, how ironic that I would go to Dr. Clapp during my pregnancy. But anyway, the sonography was up on the screen so I could see them. And they were playing, they were kissing, they were hugging in utero. And he said, they're absolutely identical, Michelle. Their head circumference is the same. Their body measurements are all the same. They are absolutely identical. And he said, I'm looking in between their legs and I don't see nothing hanging. So he said, they're gonna be two girls.
Wow, and that's what you had prayed for. Girl.
Actually, I prayed for one. So what I always say is, God bless me with more than I could even ask for.
Yes.
Way more than I could ask for. So two, and I had wanted to name
exceedingly and abundantly.
Yes, he did exceedingly and abundantly above all that I could ever ask or I could ever think of. And I wanted to name the little girl Ariel, but now I have these two girls. So it's Faith Ariel and Grace Ariel.
Wow.
So we named them that because we said it was a little bit of our faith, but it was a lot of the grace of God.
Wow.
So faith and grace.
So how has it been, what was the birth like? Was it difficult, or was it pretty easy compared to getting pregnant? What was that like?
So let me go back and say, my pregnancy, I thought, with the exception at the beginning, I had a lot of vomiting. But the pregnancy actually was very easy until the end, because the end, as you know, they got very, very big. And so I wasn't able to sleep, and they were rumbling, and it was tight space in there, and my feet were getting large, and I was kind of wobbling around. But For the most part, I thought that the pregnancy was fairly, it was an easy pregnancy. I will say that after I delivered them, I did get very sick. I had what they call the HELP syndrome and eclampsia. So I was sick for a little while, but I recovered very rapidly. So it was just a journey. It was really just a journey, and it was a journey before, it was a journey during, and it was a journey after.
Well, tell us how motherhood is for you.
Oh, motherhood is absolutely wonderful. It is more, I've gotten more joy from motherhood than anything in my entire life.
I think when you are a mature mother, because I didn't have my first until I was in my 30s. Right. I think when you're a mature mother, you've lived a little life, there's an appreciation there for your children.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
You appreciate the process of having them, you appreciate being a mother. There's just it's a different vibe for
right.
us older mothers.
Absolutely. Us mature mothers, yes, absolutely. But you know, I think that there is a time and a season for everything. And so I was grateful that even though it seems delayed for most people, I was 45 when I had them, I just think that it was on time, that I was prepared, I was ready to raise them. I think when I was much younger, I wouldn't be as prepared or as ready to nurture the gifts that are in my children. So I just thank God for God's timing, even though it seems as if we gave birth late. I just say that it was on time.
What would you have to say to other mothers, and there are lots of them, other mothers to be who are out there trying to conceive and are being told it's too late, you're too old, all kinds of excuses? What do you have to say to them about staying faithful?
What I would say is to keep the faith. Definitely keep the faith. It was a faith journey, and I just am grateful for the faithfulness of God. I would tell them to keep hope alive and trust the timing of God, because He knows the time. Even though we think that this is the time and this is the right time, He knows the time. He knows what He needs to put in you. He knows what He needs to prepare you to get you ready to be at this point in time, and He knows the season, which is the best season, because He's a God of time and He's a God of season. So just trust the timing of God. Continue to be prayerful. Continue to guard your heart. Don't allow your heart to get bitter. But what I would say is worship during the waiting. That waiting is not a waste of time, it's just a matter of time.
What are you doing to assist other mothers, other families?
So I love that question, because I believe I was divinely inspired to do a fertility boot camp. And this actually was prior to the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, it just never happened. So God is really impressing on me that the time is right now, that we need to break the silence of infertility. We need to break the stigma of infertility. Years ago, when you were considered barren and you couldn't have a child, like you said, that's a curse. People thought that that was a curse. But I think, unfortunately, that stigma still exists.
Indeed it does.
And so women and couples and families that are struggling with infertility, often they're silent. And they don't have the community, they don't have the support that they need in making their family. And it's so important because that's their legacy.
Indeed, that is something I have said for years. It's your legacy.
It's your legacy. And we want to keep our legacy alive. We don't want that legacy to stop with us. Your legacy, your unborn child, that could be the next female president.
Indeed. Indeed.
That could be the next Washington Carver. That could be the next Martin Luther King. Well, that could be the next Van Gogh. So we want to keep that legacy alive. So what God has inspired me to do is to host a fertility boot camp. So ask me why fertility boot camp.
Yeah, why? And what will it include? What will you be doing?
So when I think about a boot camp, and I can think about that a lot because I was in an Army environment. I'm a nurse. I worked for the VA hospital for 36 years and around the Army. So I believe to a certain extent that I have served. So I think I've seen so many soldiers in boot camp. And boot camp is basic training. And a lot of times we need some basic training to prepare us for the journey of motherhood and the journey like you and I had. We needed some preparation for that. We needed some training for that. So our fertility boot camp is going to be at Dudley Beauty College on Sunday, April the 27th. I invite everybody to come out, women, couples, families to come out, because these women that are struggling in this journey, we need community. And so we're creating this safe space for people to come in so that we can equip them for the journey, so they can be prepared. So they can be prepared mentally, they can be prepared physically, and they can be prepared spiritually for this journey. So I've invited the ladies of Resilience Rising. There are 7 authors who shared, they boldly proclaimed and declared their story of infertility in their book. I have the book Miracles So Great, and their book is Resilience Rising. And we're sharing our stories. We're sharing our stories to give hope. We're sharing our stories to help to build resilience and the women that will go on and have a similar journey to ours. So we're coming to equip them.
And I agree, community is so important when you're going through that. Understanding community who knows what this thing is all about, and it is a difficult journey. Indeed it is.
Right. And we want to share our stories. We want to share the strategies. We want to share what helped us to be successful in our journey. When we talk about fertility, we're talking about fruitfulness. We're talking about bearing fruit. So we're not just speaking to women with infertility, we're speaking to the community. Everyone in our community, we need to bear fruit. And we need to bear fruit that remains. We want to be fruitful in all of our endeavors. We want to be fruitful in our finances, definitely during this season. We'll be fruitful in our finances. We want to be fruitful in our legacy, of course. We want our legacy to live. We need to be fruitful in our businesses. We need to be fruitful in every area of life. And sometimes to be fruitful, you have to be pruned. You know, everybody's out in their gardens these days. We're pruning, we're cutting away that's dead, that is not going to be useful in our journey of fruitfulness. So there's some things that we're going to impart into the ladies. There's some things that need to be pruned. There needs to be things to be cut off so that they can bear fruit and that their fruit can remain.
So in the minutes we have remaining, tell me about your daughters.
My daughter, oh, absolutely amazing. I'm going to start with Amazing Grace. She is absolutely amazing. She has been diagnosed with autism, but I call her, we call her Pastor Grace, because there's such an anointing on her life for ministry. And that's why I think that the struggle was so real for me. The warfare was so real because of the gifting, that's the mantle that's on her life. Even at a young age, people would come to me and tell me, or teachers would say they were ministering. When they were having a hard day, she was ministering to them. She was singing to them. She was praying with them. And so she loves music. She loves the drums. So there's a music ministry there that needs to be cultivated. And that's why, as a woman, we need to be prepared, not just to bear children, but to be mothers.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, and to nurture our children so they can grow into all that God has destined for them to be. And faith, Faith wants to be a veterinarian. And so she's getting ready to graduate from both high school and junior college. On the 16th and 17th, she will be graduating. Grace will be graduating on June 9th. So the journey has been a blessing. I won't say that it has been without its hardships, but I believe that there was enough time on the front end to prepare me for this journey, even of motherhood.
And that was my next question. How are you? A lot of our classmates, for example, I look through Facebook, a lot of them are grandparents already. And, you know, I still have my glasses getting ready to finish college. How do you feel? I know for me, I feel blessed to have been an older mother. I think I was able to give more of myself. How do you feel now at this stage in your life?
So sometimes I won't say it's not without its challenges. It has been with some challenges at my age, but God has been with me throughout this journey. So everything that I've needed, all the help, everything that I've needed, I will say that He supplied it for me. And so it's made the journey easier. I do sit in places and occasionally people say, you have beautiful grandchildren. And initially I was horrified that they were considering me as a grandmother, but it just reminds me that God didn't forget, that even though all this long time went past, that He didn't forget me. And so that's what it reminds me of. And then what I will say is something that Maya Angelou, she named a book, I believe. Her book is, I Wouldn't Give Anything for My Journey Now. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't give anything for this journey.
Before we run out of time, give the information for the workshop one more time.
All right. I encourage you all to come out and join us as our authors. We're going to speak and we're going to pour into you. It is going to be on Sunday, April the 27th. Want to get the time right, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., and it will be at Dudley Beauty College. You can reach Dudley Beauty College at 202.
Well, we'll put that on the credits.
Oh,
at the end, we'll be able to do that.
Oh, great.
But it's been a pleasure having you. And as I said, once I saw that you had written this book and the subject matter, I said, I've got to find her.
Yeah, thank you so much,
I am
Stephanie.
so glad that you were able to join me today.
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. We've been talking to Michelle Kendrick, and we will put the information about the book and the information about the event at the end of the credits. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.